Welcome to the Evolution of Bold podcast, where we celebrate the power of women and their journey to greatness. I'm your host, Vaneese Johnson, also known as the Boldness Coach. I'm excited to take you on a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and transformation. Whether you're just starting out or well into your journey, I'm here to guide you through the challenges, help you find your purpose, and to help you let go of anything that's holding you back. So take a deep breath, relax, and get ready to dive into some juicy topics that will inspire and empower you to find your level of bold and evolve into the best version of yourself. But before we get started, let's take care of a little bit of housekeeping. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that you can join a community of bold women who are transforming their lives. Make sure that you hit that notification button so that as new shows are released that you get notified. And also connect with us on social media. We want to hear your journey. We want to celebrate you on the journey. We want to support you on the journey. And also, when you share, you inspire other women in the community to share their journey as well. So now that we got the housekeeping out of the way, let's get into the juicy topic of today. Welcome to another episode of the podcast show. On today's episode, I am talking about boundaries. Yes, we are talking about a topic that is so near and dear to me because setting boundaries is so important in the overall health and wellness of your being. And this is one of the hardest tasks that I've experienced in setting, but I've also heard from other women clients that's really hard for them to do, setting boundaries. By the end of this episode, you're going to get really clear with me on what is a boundary. We're going to look at the power of saying no. We're also going to look at emotional and self-care boundaries, boundaries in relationships, and how to be audaciously daring in boundary setting. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the topic. First, let's talk about defining boundaries. What is a boundary? A boundary is a really clear line that separates personal space, emotions, needs, and values from others. Boundaries are really important in maintaining an overall healthy well-being of you as the individual. And more often than not, this is an area that a lot of women, including myself, struggle with, right? And I've struggled up to a point, and now every now and then it's like I almost forget until I snap back, through awareness, like, this is a boundary area. And so it's really important for us as women because we give so much continually to the people that we love. We give a lot to our community. We give a lot to family members, to friends, to colleagues. Like, we are the kind of beings that are nurturers and we continually give. However, in the giving, we also deplete ourselves. So here's a litmus test for you to be able to tap into to see if it's really important for you to start setting boundaries. If you are going through your day and you're giving, people are coming to you, they're asking requests of you, and you're fulfilling them, and probably even with a sense of ease, right? Because it's just easy for you to do because it's your thing. And, by the end of the day, you are exhausted. Then you are handling challenges and issues in your commute home with your kids, with your partner, perhaps if you have aging parents, or you're following up on emails. And by the time you get to your home environment, you are just drained, like you have nothing left for anybody. And that includes yourself. You find that at the end of the day that you haven't necessarily taken care of your own health, that you're emotionally drained, mentally exhausted. You probably aren't eating, as well as you could eat. And you may have some aches and pains going on in your body, but you're feeling like, I'm just too tired to do anything other than just get these kids in the bed, get their homework, get my husband, my partner together, and I'm just going to go to bed. If this is how your day ends, then guess what, sis? You need to set some boundaries. And this is really typical in a lot of women, as we are moving and navigating through our days. And I would say this is typical, especially when you are not in the presence of mind that you are looking to evolve into being your higher self. And one of the areas to support you evolving into your higher self is an area of setting boundaries. So if you will get into that state of reflecting just on that scenario that I shared with you, and if you're in that reflection, if you're looking at that and you're thinking, this is me, Vaneese, then yes, you need to look at setting some boundaries. And I'm going to tell you, it was tough for me. Even though I have an adult son and I'm home by myself. At this point, I don't have a partner, and my family lives out of state. It was really tough for me because I was under the guise of, well, it's just me. I can work long hours. I can do all these activities, and I can check on all of my friends who have kids and aging parents. And, I had really kind of put myself, in that authoritative position as if I'm the person that knows it all and that can do it all. Right. And I found myself being depleted, from that. Right. And it wasn't necessarily so much that people were always calling on me, but I was really looking externally to validate that I'm needed in the world. And I was like, well, if I show up for these people and if I do these things for these people, and if I over give, then it'll just feed my soul and my ego like, yeah, you're needed, you're important. But it did the complete opposite. It wore me out. And what I noticed is that I wasn't getting a return on the investment of time, energy, resources, and emotions that I was putting out, for other people. They were taking my responses, taking my contribution, not from a place of stealing it from me or being ungrateful, about what I was sharing with them, but they would take it and they would move on to solve whatever their issue or whatever their problems were. Right. And they would say thank you. However, the reward that I was hoping that I would get from that never materialized. A reward, to me could have been like, oh, girl, thank you so much. Here's a few dollars for doing that. Or the reward, could have been, what can I do for you, Vaneese? Let me take over some of your challenges and issues. Or the reward could have been, that I got more customers, or that customer gave me, more work or paid me quicker, sooner, faster on the work that I had delivered on. None of the rewards ever came through, and it just felt like, well, what am I doing this for? If I'm just giving it all away and not really honoring my worth or my value, what is really going on, Vaneese? And in that reflective moment for myself, and more in the tired stupor, the exhausted stupor, I was like, hey, wait a minute. What's going on here? What is this about? And when I told myself the truth that me over giving and not having boundaries was because I had emotional needs, self care needs that I wasn't taking care of, that I could give that to myself. When I got clear on the answer, on telling the truth with my own answer, that's when I realized, you know what? There is a power in saying no. And that's what I started doing. I started saying no to people. And I know that it's easier said than done to say no to people, because we can all get together and say, no is a complete sentence. And I don't have a problem saying no. You may not have a problem saying no to some people, but you have a problem saying no to other people. The goal here is to not have a problem saying no to anybody at any time. That includes family members, that includes colleagues, that includes friends, that includes, committees and programs and things that you're on, right? There is power in saying no. And here is a way that can support you with really establishing and supporting the power of no. First of all, it's a complete sentence. Second of all, most people will say, well, what do you mean no? Well, because I said no, that's not what I want to do. You can follow up your no, not with an explanation, but with a confirmation. The confirmation is, it's not what I want to do. And I said no, and that's it. So don't get in the space of explaining, because when you start to explain to people, what you're really doing is you're asking them to approve of, you want them to validate your reason of no. And when you're asking for permission for your no to be validated, it's never going to be validated by them. Because if somebody wants something, they want what they want. So they may even get into an argument with you about it because they've made up their mind that this is what they want. So when you say no to someone, it's okay to back that no up with, because I said so, because that's not what I want to do. Don't leave it up for negotiation. Don't leave it up for compromise. Another tactic that you can do behind saying no is that make sure that behind that no, that whatever the next step or task that you have behind that no is something that's important to you. And it's something that fuels you up and fills you up. So here's an example of what I mean. If there's a colleague at work and you both have projects that you're working on and they're independent projects of each other, that coworker asks you for some help or some assistance. It's one thing to assist someone, it's another thing to take over or to take a block of work, from them, to, that's important to their project, and put it on top of your work that you already getting done. So what you can do is you can tell that coworker that I can support you, under 1, 2, 3 area, or under one area. Or you may qualify their request when they ask you to help them and say, tell me specifically what is it that you need help on. And then I will see where I can support you, or I will look to see what that support looks like. So don't immediately, just accept their request for help without qualifying it. And once you've qualified that one way or the other, sometimes the qualification is no, I'm not able to assist you with that. Then turn yourself back towards a task that fulfills you and that you need to complete. So that when you're saying no to them, you're going to something that's important and valuable to you. The same thing, can be important, when it comes to your health and wellness. So let's say, for instance, that, Zumba is your thing after work, and you're like, I cannot work late because it's important for me to get to the gym, to get to my Zumba class, to get my dance on, and to hang out with the people that, where we all come together for that hour to have a moment of release and fun with each other. And somebody wants you to work late, on a project, and you're like, I've structured my date and I've gone on my checklist and I've gotten things done that were important to get done. So I'm not able to work late because I have another commitment. And you go to your commitment. So you can always back up your no with a task that's important to you, or with an activity after that no that matters to you, so that you can be able to validate why this no is important to you. So I hope that's helpful. The other side of that, let's say that you do choose to, support a coworker with a project. You qualify again, where is it that they need help? And then you choose an area that you can support them with that doesn't impact the work that you need to do or the time, energy, and resources that you have for your project. You pick that one area. You also can help them brainstorm to find other resources and tools that can help them to achieve whatever that request is that they had of you. You can help them to be empowered, to tap into resources, again, that can support them to get that request met. So saying no is really from a place of really completeness. And you can add to that completeness by helping people to see options. And you can support your completeness by going to the next level of whatever is behind your no that's important to you. So saying no is a complete sentence. Another area of boundaries is emotional boundaries and self-care. And I'm going to break each one of these down individually. Self-care boundaries are very important for your overall well-being. Yes, boundaries in general are important for the overall, but if we had to zero in on a specific area, the area I would zero in is self-care. Because here's the truth that they say on the airlines, right? You got to put your own mask on first before you can be able to help other people, to get oxygen. You've got to take care of yourself first. What I've seen and even what I've experienced is when we overgive and don't have boundaries, our physical health suffers, our emotional health suffers, our mental health suffers. And when we do that and don't pay attention and make self-care a priority, then we get the impact of all of the dis-ease that comes in those different areas. And typically, if we're so busy operating without boundaries, before we know it, we have spent hours, days, weeks, months, even years, you know, get over giving of ourselves, outside of having boundaries to the point to where it affects our overall health. And a lot of times, excuse me, a lot of times when we set those boundaries, it puts us in a position of power so that we can get in front of and even take better care of ourselves. You don't have to wait until you've been given a job, given a job 25 years, 30 years, 40 years of your time for you to take care of yourself. No, you can do that on the front end. And if you find yourself not setting boundaries so that you can be able to take care of yourself, that's a deeper question that we need to ask. Like, what is really going on with us internally where we feel like we need to throw ourselves on the sword, and sacrifice our overall well-being just so that we can have people around us happy. It's just not even a good look, sis. And I want to go get back a little further into self care. You really get to look at setting limits on your emotional energy, on your physical energy, on your mental energy. You get to really look at setting limits. One of the ways that I have been intentionally focusing on self care and setting limits in all of those areas is every morning I get up and I go and do a 3 to 5 mile walk every morning. Now, I'm well aware that this may not be possible for everybody, but hear me out because I'm also going to give you some other additional tips, right, on self care. And so, why that's so important to me, because in the morning time is what I've discovered is the best time for me to give myself self care. At the end of the day, it ain't happening. Why? Because there's so much that I've taken on mentally, emotionally, and physically throughout the day. At the end of the day, I'm really depleted. So at the top of my morning is so important to me because that's before everything starts in the day. So I intentionally make sure that I get myself to bed at a decent hour. I wake up early in the morning. Sometimes I need to set my alarm clock. Most times I don't. But I get up early in the morning. I do my journaling. I do some meditation. I give my thanks and gratitude. And I get up, put my walking clothes on, and I'm out the door. And I also have a pre-made protein shake sometimes. So just in case I'm hungry, because I had to start thinking about things that could slow me down, and definitely stopping to fix a smoothie, put all the fixing in. That stuff, slows and taps into my time. So I had to learn to be clever. Like, what is it that I need, to have in place to make sure that I can get out early in the morning so that I can make sure that I'm taking care of myself and be on top of that. Right. And so I get up, I get out, and I go do my walk. And on my walk, I'm listening to podcast shows. I'm listening to audiobooks. Excuse me. I may even be watching or listening to things on YouTube as I'm walking. I'm looking around at nature. I'm letting the sun, getting some vitamin D on my skin and charge up my battery. And I'm also giving gratitude and thanks to God. And so when I take my time and do that for myself, oh, I also talk to myself too. When I take my time and do that for myself, I feel so fueled up. So by the time I get home from that 3 or that 5 mile walk, depending on what's on my calendar, by the time I get back home, I can, get myself showered and get myself ready for the day. And I really bring a lot of energy with me when I do that. But I feel so good because I put myself first. So those of you, you might say, well, Venice, I don't have the flexibility to be able to get out and walk in the morning, but I really want you to think about what are ways that you can give yourself 5, 10, or 15 minutes of self-care in the morning. When I was a young woman coming up, a young mom, my Aunt Bunt, and God rest her soul. I remember when we lived with her, when my son was like I think he was like around 1 years old, a little bit over one. And Aunt Bunt was married to Uncle George, and they were an older couple. I think Aunt Bunt probably was in her like late 70s, I think. And so every morning, Aunt Bunt would get up early around 6 o'clock, and she would go in the bathroom. And they only had one bathroom in the house. She would go in the bathroom and she would take her Bible and she would take a tablet. And she would go in that bathroom and she would be in there for about 30 minutes to an hour. She would be in there studying her Bible and making notes. I could also hear her in there praying. And so she did that every morning. She didn't go to Bible study during the week. She wasn't on any committees at the church, and she did go to church on Sunday. So every Sunday she went to Sunday school and she went to church. However, even in her late 70s, every morning she got up and she went to the bathroom and she sat there with her Bible and with her notebook and she studied her Bible. So that was a way that she took care of herself, her spiritual self. She wasn't able to physically move around as much, but she did move around in the house and she kind of stayed in certain zones, right? That she could grab onto things. However, I always admired that about her. And I would say part of that rubbed off, as my son, started to grow in life, I looked for those moments where I could be able to have for myself 5 or 10 or 15 minutes. So I just want you to really think about what are some of the ways in your life that you can be able to start to promote self-care. Just think about that. 1 or 2 ways and things that you can do. Is that when you are driving home, is that disconnecting from everything? Is that putting your phone on silent? Is that you turning the music off so that you could just have some quiet time to decompress? Is that you pulling over, to the side of the road on the way home in a place that has a beautiful backdrop? Maybe there's water, it's a beautiful park, or perhaps is it you're getting a cup of coffee or tea and just winding your day down before you step into your home life. And another tip is before you leave work, a good way to set self-care boundaries, and leaving the workplace at the end of the day is to do your to-do list before you leave your desk at the end of the day. Why this is important for setting boundaries is that when you do a brain dump at the end of the day and put that on your to-do list and you leave it on your desk, then you draw a clear line between your work time day ending and your evening time day starting. That's a good way to be able to have a boundary between work and personal life. And the last thing that I want to add on this for a boundary and self-care, the same way that you plan out your vacation every year from work, I want you to also look at planning out your doctor visits. I tell all my clients, when my clients come to me, especially at the beginning of the year, and a lot of the women want to set their goals, for the year, my request to them is before we meet, what I want you to do is 2 things. I want you to plan your vacation for the entire year. And that could include, a week or weeks, however much time you have. It also includes them looking at holidays, like the Monday holidays, looking at them doing 4-day weekends. And it includes you calendaring in your health appointments, your annual physical, as well as your dental and your vision appointments. Because when you set the boundary on your time for the year, then it allows you to know that it is a priority on your schedule for your overall well-being. So I hope that those tips were very helpful for you. in terms of how you can be able to make your self care, the top of your priority for setting boundaries for your overall health and wellness. The next area I want to talk about are emotional boundaries. This is so important because we are emotional beings. Women, we're nurturers. And we're are emotional by nature. And the emotional parts of us, the nurturing parts of us, want to give and help and save and support at the expense of our own emotional health and wellness. So here's what I want you to think about though. When in the past, when you've gotten requests for help that requires an emotional tug on you, and you show up all, full girded up in your emotions, roll your sleeves up, ready to jump in and ride or die, is that really about you showing up 100% emotionally available? Or is it about that person really needing that level of emotional contribution from you? So just think about that. Are you showing up and giving without boundaries because that's what you want to do? Or is it what they're asking you to do? What I have found in coaching hundreds and thousands of women around the globe is that a lot of times emotionally they're giving because that's what they want to do, not what the person has asked of them to do. And when you are giving from a place of what you want, it's always going to require so much more of you and a lot of you. So, what I encourage you to do is when someone makes a request of you and that request taps into your emotion, I want you to qualify what level of boundary needs to be set with that request. Really hear that person out and qualify. So, tell me exactly what is it that you need. I remember that one of a friend of mine, that a person that I used to be friends with a long time ago, and this person had lost their job. And I'm a career coach, is one of the hats I wear. And that person had a package through their company to work with the career coach. So they had someone in a professional setting, professional title of the career coach that they could go to for support. However, that person and I were friends, and that person, she knew that I am a career coach. And so that person was having a hard time emotionally because when you lose a job, it's like death or divorce. There is a period of disbelief. There's a period of mourning. There's a period of grief that you experience all these emotions, right? And so, because we were friends, that person would call me and she would just lay all of the heavy emotions on me. So, it would be this roller coaster in the conversation, right? Up and down, up and down. And it would be very taxing. And it felt like sometimes we would be on the phone for hours dealing with this emotional roller coaster. And by the time I would get off the phone with her, or even the time I would leave a visit with her, I would just be emotionally drained and exhausted. I mean, I literally would be so exhausted that sometimes I would miss my dinner. Sometimes I would have to take, 2 aspirin because I just had a headache and it would just stress me out. And so one day, what I ended up having a conversation with her because it had just become too much. And I said to her, "It seems like you're having a really tough emotional time with this transition." And she says, "I am." And I said to her, "I just want to tell you, I love you. I love you so much. And I'm really in support of you getting through this transition period in your life. So, as your friend, my request to you is that you tap into that outsource program that your employer has already paid for. And what I am requesting of you is that you get yourself into therapy." And I said, "As your friend, I'm not qualified as a therapist to support you because I'm not a therapist emotionally. And this is really heavy." And I also said, my role for you as a friend is really to help lighten things up for you and to be a source of enjoyment and fun for you and camaraderie and sisterhood. However, the emotional support you need is really heavy on me and it's weighing on me. So I want to be that place of fun and joy, and excitement and, sisterhood for you. However, I can't be that and the emotional support for you. So my request is, for you to get yourself some support. And then I said to her, so tell me, what does that look like for you in getting support? When are you going to make that happen? And when she was able to really see and hear me, and I was able to articulate that to her, that was setting a boundary without me saying to her, I got to set a boundary, girl. You can't be calling over here and pouring all this stuff on me. So I was able to set a boundary for myself, but also set one with her in a way that still allowed me to be there for her emotionally, but not draining on myself. So she went on and she got the support that she needed. And eventually, after some weeks and some times, because she needed time to process that, when we got back together, we were able to do sisterhood, girlfriend stuff. And we did talk about how is the support systems working. We talked a little bit about it, but it didn't tax our friendship in that way. So I just really want you to think about setting emotional boundaries, because it's not selfish to set emotional boundaries. It is necessary for your emotional well-being to set those boundaries. And I will also add to that, it's important for you to have emotional boundaries for your emotional needs as well. So, the same way that that particular friend was taxing me with her emotional issues, I want you to look to see, are you taxing your friends, your spouse, your family, your partner, your kids with your emotional needs? Because perhaps you may need to set some emotional boundaries of your own so that you are not overweighing the people that love you and want to be there to support you. So, just something to think about. Another area that I want to tap into are boundaries in relationships. This is in all types of relationships. This is romantic, this is family, this is friendship, this is colleagues. Boundaries are about creating mutual respect and understanding. And I will share with you when I first kind of got back into the dating space and got really intentional about dating as I was, going through my divorce journey and getting to the other side of that, I really didn't understand the importance of boundary settings from a romantic standpoint. I was really emotionally wounded, from, that marriage from and that divorce process, that I was really seeking emotional support, and I didn't even recognize that's what was happening. Not only was I seeking emotional support, but I was attracting other, prospects, men who was also seeking emotional support. So you can already imagine how like emotional that was, for two people. It was almost like I couldn't get to know this person because the emotional, just outlet they needed to express themselves and the support and the affirming, oh my goodness, and the same on his side from me from that. And so when I started recognizing that I need to really have some boundaries, between myself and other people emotionally, that when I started to recognize that, that really shifted how I showed up in dating. And essentially, what had to happen for me was I had to get myself out of the dating space to take care of my emotions and to really develop healthier emotions around myself and to find ways to sustain my own relationship needs and to get clear, understanding around what kind of boundaries were important to me in the dating process. And I'm still in the dating process, and I'm still, always bringing heightened awareness in my dating exchanges around, emotional awareness around the boundaries as I date. Right. And I also look at my energy, my time, my resources. I look at areas of my life that I have intentionally worked on that are very important to me, and looking at not compromising those areas that I've worked so hard to get clear on, not compromising them just to give it to somebody else, right? There's a difference between negotiating and compromising in a romantic, encounter, right? Or a romantic partnership. When you are negotiating, that means exactly that. You are negotiating what will work, what will not work. That could be times, that could be days, that could be, certain things that are important to you that help to keep you, keep your whole well being kind of balanced, right? And when it comes to compromising, that's almost as if you are choosing one or the other. So I don't do compromising. However, what I did learn to do so that I could be able to set clear boundaries was learn how to negotiate, in the dating process. There are times when I need certain days of the week, for my well being. I mentioned to you earlier that I shared with you all earlier that in the morning times when I get up, so that's important for me to start my day early, for me to be able to get out and walk. So, a boundary around physical health and wellness is really important to me. That is a must for me. And so, of course, when you have excursions where you may need to be gone for a couple of days with your partner, this person you're dating, you're on vacation, of course, you're going to have that time calendared in. But in general, it's important to come into those dating experiences with certain boundaries set so that way you can be your best self, in that relationship, right? Or in that exchange. And it's important to respect the other person's boundaries, right? If that person has children, or if they have other obligations, outside of that dating experience with you, then you get to give them some mutual respect for that. And I think it's okay to ask a person what boundaries are important to you. So that way we can be able to honor and give mutual respect to each other. And don't be afraid if you're asking a person about what boundaries are important to them. Don't be afraid in you saying, here are boundaries important to me. Even if that person isn't asking you, be okay in the exchange of getting to know each other to talk about what boundaries are important to you. And lastly, I want to put a bow on that and say you don't have to be so inflexible with your boundaries because remember, there's an opportunity for a negotiation. So be open to the negotiation, especially if can tell that you both can tell that this is something that you want to, put more time and energy into. Now, on the other side of relationship, boundary setting in relationships, I want to talk about family. This is one of the areas that's really hard, for a lot of women when it comes to spouses, partners, children, other family members is setting boundaries. Let me tell you something. Just because somebody is a family member does not mean that they do not get to have boundaries set. Just because somebody is your mama, your daddy, your brother, your sister, your children, just because they're under those titles, y'all are genetically connected, DNA connected. It doesn't mean that they don't get to have boundaries set with them, especially when it comes to you managing your overall well being and your emotional health. Sometimes the people that tax us the most are those family members. And they also are the toughest sometimes to set boundaries with. So I want to share with you a little story, that I had with a family member where I had to set some boundaries because it was starting to attack my emotional well-being. I was stressed out about it. I was anxious, around them because I felt that I knew a request was going to come up. I felt like the money that I was earning and making that I needed to be able to put some aside to take care of that family member. I was feeling like the life I had built, I couldn't really enjoy it, or I was going to be shamed for enjoying the life I had built because that family member hadn't done that for themselves. I mean, it was so emotionally taxing for me until one day I just said, I can't do this with this person anymore. Like, I'm going to have a difficult conversation. But before I got to the point of having that difficult conversation, I sat down and got really clear about what boundaries needed to be set. And I set boundaries around my personal finance. It's my business. My personal finances are my business. Unless I'm coming to you, family members, saying, I need you to give me X, Y, and Z dollars. I need you to bail me out. Unless I'm asking you for money that requires me to explain to you why I'm asking for financial assistance, then it's none of your business. Also, the lifestyle that I've chosen for myself, it is my business because I've earned the right and I am worthy of living this lifestyle that I live. So I don't need to get permission to travel around the world. I don't need to get permission to stay in luxury hotels. I don't need to get permission for those things. So I literally had to write that out. I will say another area that was really important to me, in getting clear about boundaries with this family member was me really getting clear about the boundaries that I have for myself. Because in all honesty, if you don't have your own boundaries clear, then how are you going to tell somebody else where they need to have boundaries for you at? So as I was going through looking, on the list, looking at boundaries I wanted to set with them, I had to get clear about, well, what boundaries do I need for myself so that I'm not getting out of line with me when it comes to requests from other people. So sitting down and getting really clear was so helpful in preparing for that conversation. And it also provided me a baseline for me to also get clear about my values. So I want to come back to that in a second. Let's pin that, but I want to go back to this story. So as I got clear about the boundaries I needed to set with that family member, I made the phone call. And at the top of the phone call, I told that family member, this is going to be a difficult conversation. So I just need to tell you up front. And I paced myself. I took a deep breath. And what I said to that individual was, that family member, I said that I really spoke from a place of empowering them. And I said that this now is a perfect opportunity in this moment in time for you to create the life that you want for yourself. This is a perfect moment in time for you to be able to look at your life as a whole and decide how you want your life to be going forward. So I really spoke from a place of empowering them to be able to step back and look at their whole life. And I used words like that you can do for your life. So I used the words of ownership for them, first person for them, so that they could be able to see that they had a power to choose. And I also followed up with asking them along the way, is this making sense? As I'm talking to you, when I say to you that you have the opportunity to create the life you want for yourself, what is it that you hear me say you saying? So it was important for me to be an active listener with them in the conversation, because along the way, I wanted to know if we were kind of on the same page, right? Before I got to the tougher parts of the conversation. And as the conversation moved along, then I said to them, I'm not able to support you with what you want for your life in this moment in time. Like, I'm not able to do that for you. And to do that for you means that I would compromise my entire, health and wellness. And given what my obligations are and the life that I live, that is what's a priority for me. For me to maintain my lifestyle and my health and wellness, my overall health and wellness, so that I can show up and be the best that I can be in the things that I need to do in my life. And that person, they were angry with me. They felt that I had disrespected them. They felt that as a family member, how could I do that? And I let them express, their emotions around it and even their disappointment around it. And as after they expressed it, I just said to them, I understand. I understand how you could feel, and I acknowledge how you could feel. It's tough, it's frustrating. However, what I am doing is giving you a heads up so that it's not in the moment of a request that I tell you no. So now that you know where the boundary sits between you and I, then you can make some choices based on what you know for sure and what you've heard me say and what I've heard you say. And that's how the conversation went. How it ended was I told that family member, again, I respect your thoughts. I respect your perspective, and that's as much as I can give you on that. And at the end of the day, we're still family members. We have these boundaries, and we've learned to navigate. It changed the dynamics of our relationship a bit, but that's okay. I don't hate them. They don't hate me. I don't dislike them. They don't dislike me. We just know that there are boundaries in our relationship. If there is a 911 call, I am there, Johnny, on the spot. I am there. If it's a medical emergency, I am there. If it's something that will compromise their health, I am there. And but for general living and for general things that they are empowered to be able to take care of themselves, they have to take the responsibility for that. When I finished that conversation, I felt so light. I felt relieved. I felt like, okay, now I can get back to focusing on what's important to my overall well-being. And I can get back to focusing on the lifestyle that I'm creating. I can get focused back on the finances that I am earning, from the worth of the talent that I put out there in what I do. And it just relieved so much stress off of me to be able to have that difficult conversation. So, what I'm encouraging you to do is if there is someone in your inner circle, whether it's romantic, whether it's a family member, even if it's a close friend, what I'm encouraging you to do is to really, again, get clear about what boundaries need to be set with that individual and have the difficult conversation and preference it at the top of that conversation. This is going to be difficult. So that way, that person knows that something's coming. And as you are having the conversation, really be open and create space for them to express whatever they want to express. Don't make it argumentative. Don't be confrontational about it. Allow them to express that and acknowledge that, thank you for sharing and expressing that. And it's okay to say, you know what, I don't agree with it, but I do just appreciate you sharing what's important to you. So we can agree to disagree. And be okay to say at the end of the conversation, this is how I'd like for to see us to continue. And or be okay, that we've gone as far as we can go with this connection. And there's no other direction for us to go. And be okay to let it go. And it may take you some time to get through it, but when you look on the counter side of that, is that when you're not intentional about setting boundaries, when you look at the cost of it, hopefully that will help you to, be able to clarify, that you did the next right best thing for you and setting boundaries. And as we get to wrap this up, I want to leave you with this thought and some action steps, right? To be audaciously daring in boundary setting. Be bold enough to tell people no. Be bold enough to set boundaries about your worth. Be bold enough to not settle and allow your boundaries to be ignored. When a person doesn't respect the boundaries that you set and you respect the boundaries that you set for you, then it is time for you to change environments. Family members, romantic, friendships, colleagues, or not. Be bold enough to walk away. Trust me, there is healing on the other side of your boldness. This is about an evolution of you evolving into the next level of your bold. And just know that in evolution, there are some habits, some behaviors, and some beliefs, and some fears that we get to leave behind because they will create space for the next best higher version of you to step on in. So, I hope this has been something that's been insightful for you, that I've given you pause to think about setting boundaries. Oh, one thing I want to add to that, I mentioned that I wanted to give you something to do, right? A little bit of homework. I want you to take a few moments also. I mentioned, a while back that, if you're looking to have a difficult conversation, is to get clear about the boundaries that you want to set with that person. But I really want you to get clear about boundaries that you need to set individually for yourself. Really get clear about what boundaries do you not to cross, that you don't need to cross over yourself on, right? What are those boundaries? If you say that you're going to take better care of your health and wellness, and you got to do this thing at this time on this day and this activity, set a boundary and do it and stick to it. Because when you set self boundaries, it's about you establishing self trust. So the first order of business is to set boundaries with yourself. And a way that you can be able to set boundaries is to set your values. Get really clear about what are your top 5 values in your life. What are your top 5 values? And build your boundaries from your values. God is my value. Self-trust is my value. Family, is my value. Physical activity is my value. And financial wellness and my values. Those are my top 5 values. And within those values, I'm very clear the areas within those values. And then within those areas, I've set boundaries. So in the financial wellness area, I look at investing my money, consistently is important in that area, in the financial wellness area. And what that looks like when I say invest consistently, I joined a women's investment group, and then I submit and deposit money every month, or quarterly within that group. And I make sure that the money I'm depositing is money that I always set aside, and I never compromise that amount that I'm depositing to go and spend it frivolously on things that don't give me a return on my value. So that boundary is really clear, that I invest in my health and wellness that supports my financial overall well-being. So get clear, be bold enough, be audacious enough to get clear and set boundaries for yourself, and then set them with other people. And remember, no is a complete sentence. So thank you for your time with me today on this episode. And I want to hear your ahas. So make sure that you drop me a line and tell me what came up for you. Even tell me if there's an area that you're struggling with setting a boundary. I would love to answer your question, in a podcast show response. As a matter of fact, I think I may just do that because I've been getting quite a few questions in, and I will do an episode on answering questions. So if you've got a question, if you've got a challenge around setting boundaries, drop that into one of the social media platforms so that I can pick that question up, and I'll be more than happy to respond to it in a podcast episode. All right. Thank you for your time and being with me on this episode. And remember to always focus on living a life that is bold, big, and bad with no permission needed. I'll see you next episode. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of the Evolution of Bold podcast. I hope you found the conversation as inspiring and empowering as I did. It's always a pleasure to share the stories of my journey along with those of other remarkable women who have shown us what it means to live life boldly. I'd love to know what stood out to you the most. Your feedback is really important to me. So please leave a comment in the feed or on one of our social media channels. And don't forget to hit the subscribe and notification button before you go. Stay connected with us for more insights and exclusive content. Keep evolving, stay bold, and always live your truth. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for our next show. Until next time, I'm Vaneese Johnson, the Boldness Coach, cheering you on in your journey towards your level of bold.